Hello, welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we drift back, far back, to the soft, sunlit world of ancient Greece. Before we begin, first like and subscribe the channel for more videos. We won't charge into battles or list every war. We won't race through dates or kings. Instead, we'll take a quiet walk through time, through dusty village streets, along marble courtyards, across the gentle sweep of the Aegean Sea. We'll sit by firesides, listen to whispered prayers, and feel the weight of daily chores and sandals against stone. This is not a story of heroes alone. It's the story of ordinary hands carrying books, of thinkers staring quietly into the sea, and of priests waiting for the wind to shift. So close your eyes now, let the sounds of today fade, and let's begin our calm journey into the world of the Greek Empire. The sun beats down on a bustling marketplace. Merchants from across the known world have brought their wares to sell. Their voices a familiar clamor. The air is thick with the scent of olives, figs, fresh bread, and the salty temps of the sea carried in on a merchant ship from some far-off, exotic port. You navigate the throngs of people with practiced ease, stopping here and there for a chat or a friendly game of checkers. Life in the city is good. The Acropolis, that great citadel of shining marble, stands as a testament to the glory of Athena, the city's patron and the pride of every Athenian heart. Within its sturdy walls, artisans work tirelessly to keep the great temple shipshape and ready to receive the countless pilgrims who come to pay tribute to the goddess of wisdom and war. You leave the city now, following a well-worn path that leads out into the endless green of the olive groves. The gnarled trunks of ancient trees stand like stoic sentries along the road, their silver-green leaves shimmering softly in the sun. The air grows still, and the only sound is the buzzing of cicadas in the warm afternoon light. The path curves and rises, offering a glimpse of the sparkling sea far below. The salt-laced wind whispers through the leaves and carries with it the scent of distant lands and the promise of adventure. A lone traveler approaches, his face weathered and etched with the stories of faraway places. With a nod and a shared smile, you pass the time and the day drifts into evening. The sky deepens to the rich blue of a twilight sky, fading to indigo as the stars begin their slow ascent. The moon, a sliver of pearl in the velvet dark, casts long shadows that dance and flicker in the gathering gloom. The air is alive with the scent of wood smoke and roasting meat as families gather around flickering hearths, sharing stories and laughter. The night deepens, the fireflies appear, and the chorus of crickets grows louder as the world around you slips into a peaceful slumber. And as the last embers glow, you drift into a sleep as endless and as deep as the night sky above. Let's meet some people. This is Agathon. He's 19 years old and he works with his father in the family olive press. Every day he crushes olives into oil, helps his mother sort the jars, and sells their goods in the marketplace. Most days there is enough olive oil to bring home some extra for cooking and for burning in the sacred hearth. But this year the harvest has been bad and they have barely enough for their lamps. Agathon hopes next month will be better. His older brother Demetrius says not to worry. The gods will provide. Agathon isn't so sure. He hasn't seen the gods provide much lately. This is Eric. He's about 40 and is head librarian at the great library in Alexandria. Today a new scroll arrived from Athens, and he's unfurling it now. He's making notes on the papyrus, adding the latest discoveries to his records. When the scroll is unpinned, he sends a runner to the harbor to grab some parchment and ink, then sits to write a letter. Soon he'll send word to scholars across the empire about what he's found. And here's Hype. She teaches philosophy to men and women in her courtyard. Today she's talking about the nature of reality. Her students sit around her in a circle on the ground. They talk and debate. One student speaks up, confused about a passage in Plato's Republic. Hypatia thinks for a moment. Then she picks up a piece of chalk and draws a series of circles on the ground. Using the chalk, she explains how the forms are like these circles, perfect and eternal. One student asks, what if something is both a chair and not a chair? Like if someone makes a wooden stool with 4 legs but calls it a table, would it be a chair? They debate until lunchtime when servants bring out figs and bread. After lunch, Hypatia tells them, tomorrow we'll discuss your homework. Until then, remember, the point of philosophy is to make life better. We travel next to Athens. Here Marcus watches the sailors unload purple-dyed cloths from ships that have come in from the east. He buys some boats, then heads into town. He needs to get ready for tonight. He'll join the men of his civic group for their annual festival. They're going to parade through the city, stopping at the shrines along the way. At each stop a different member will step forward and chant a prayer. Marcus is bringing a goat for sacrifice to Athena. Tomorrow will be a big celebration with feasting, music, and dancing. Tonight, though, everything must be prepared. Marcus stops at the temple to drop off the goat. The high priest takes it from him and nods toward the sacrificial knife. The goat bleats once, then falls still. Marcus winces. He doesn't like seeing animals hurt, but he knows it's necessary. The priest steps away, then returns with a small cut piece of thigh. He gives it to Marcus. The boy smiles and pockets it. He'll give it to his little sister. She loves the taste of the shah. Now he can go home. He can't wait for the celebration. Back in Alexandria, Eratosthenes is writing by lamplight. He pauses to dip his quill in ink. He's almost finished with his letter. He writes down the titles of the works he sent word of, then adds a postscript he hopes that Ptolemy as well. He dips his quill in ink again. The library is quiet except for the scratching of his quill. Outside, the city sleeps under the moonlight, and in the countryside outside Athens, Demetrius tends his olive grove. His brother Agathon is asleep in their home, but Demetrius can't sleep. He keeps thinking about all the work they have to do and how little time there is to rest. Plus, their landlord keeps putting off fixing their roof, and the rains are coming. He looks up at the sky. He wishes the gods would help them, but he knows they won't. There's only one thing to do. He sighs and gets back to work. He'll get up before sunrise and start repairing the walls. Their landlord doesn't care how they fix it as long as they pay rent. The days pass, filled with the quiet tasks of life. Agathon and Demetrius patch their roof, plant their fig tree, gather olives and repair sandals. Eratosthenes writes and receives letters, reads, scrolls, and catalogs, tablets. Hypatia teaches, debates and tends a garden. Marcus plays his part in civic life, tending the altar in the temple of Athena, giving thanks for bountiful harvests and praying for safe journeys on the roads. One day, while collecting olives, Agathon finds a tiny lizard darting between the trees. He picks it up and examines it. It's so beautiful. He wishes he could keep it, but he knows the lizard belongs in the wild. He lets it crawl away. As he walks back to the press, he realizes something. Maybe the gods are in the small things, in the lizard darting between the trees, in the endless blue of the sky. And maybe that's why his brother works so hard. Not just for food or money, but because life is beautiful and worth working for, no matter how hard it is. Thank you for watching. Do you find comfort in the idea that even great empires were once made up of ordinary people? Share your thoughts below. Also, do you want to forget to check out our other channels and leave us a comment with your suggestions for future videos? Hey there, my fellow history lovers. Today, we're diving into the lives of the common folk in ancient Greece. Forget the famous heroes and rulers. We'll be talking about the regular folks, the peasants, merchants, and artisans who were the backbone of ancient Greece. What was their daily life like? How did they earn their money? And what kind of communities did they live in? Let's get started. First off, let's imagine a typical Greek village. Picture this. You're wandering through a maze of narrow streets lined with whitewashed houses. Most of these homes are built from stone, but some are made of wood. Their roofs are covered in red terracotta tiles, giving the whole village a vibrant look. Now, you might be wondering, where are the fancy temples and huge statues? Well, those are more common in bigger cities like Athens. In villages, life is a bit more laid back. As you stroll through the village, you notice something interesting. Each house has a small courtyard called a It's surrounded by columns and is usually where the family gathers to eat and relax. Some courtyards even have a fountain or a small altar where they make offerings to the gods. You also spot an open area where people gather for meetings and festivals. In the center of the village, there's usually a plaza with a large altar, a place where townspeople come together for religious ceremonies and celebrations. The village also has a few workshops where local artisans show off their skills. And of course, there's the agora, the marketplace where people buy and sell goods. All of these places weave together to create a tight-knit community. Now, who are the people who call this village home? Well, you've got farmers who tend to the crops and livestock outside of town. They grow wheat, barley, olives, and grapes. And yes, they do have slaves working alongside them. The villagers wear simple tunics and cloaks made from wool and linen. Their clothes are usually undyed, but some commoners who can afford it might wear garments dyed in natural colors like purple or red. You'll also see some merchants, men who travel to different cities to buy and sell goods. They might bring back fancy fabrics from Egypt or gold jewelry from Spain. And then there are the artisans, skilled craftspeople who create useful items like pottery, tools, and textiles. Potters, weavers, metalworkers, and carpenters are just a few examples. Every single one of these people plays an important part in building the economy and culture of ancient Greece. Now that we've got our setting and characters, let's dive into a typical day in the life of ordinary Greeks. The sun hasn't even thought about rising yet, but you, our trusty commoner, are already up. If you're a farmer, your day begins before the sun cracks open an eyelid. You've got animals to feed, crops to check, and the land to prepare for planting. For fishermen, the early hours are all about getting ready for a day at sea. That means checking the nets, readying the boat, and hoping for a bountiful catch. As for artisans and merchants, they start their day a little slower. They might spend the morning planning their work, collecting materials, or figuring out their finances. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the common folk of ancient Greece dive into their daily tasks. Farmers are knee-deep in the soil, planting crops, caring for their livestock, or harvesting what they've sown. It's hard, physical work, but it's the backbone of life in ancient Greece. After all, farming provides food, clothing, and other essential goods. Fishermen are battling the waves, casting their nets and hauling in their catches. The sea is their livelihood, providing them with food and income. Meanwhile, artisans are crafting their wares. Potters are shaping clay, weavers are creating intricate textiles, and metalworkers are hammering away at their anvils. These skilled craftspeople are creating not just useful items, but beautiful works of art. In the bustling marketplaces of ancient Greece, merchants are haggling over prices, buying and selling goods from all corners of the known world. They're bringing exotic spices from Egypt, fine fabrics from Asia Minor, and precious metals from Spain. It's a competitive world, but the merchants are vital to the economy. They're connecting people and places through trade. During this time, life in ancient Greece isn't all about work. People take time to gather in public spaces like the agora, the marketplace, or the stoa, a shaded, colonnaded structure, to socialize, discuss current events, or participate in local government. These common folk may not be famous, but they are the heart and soul of ancient Greek society. They're the ones who keep the economy moving, the communities thriving, and the cultural exchange happening. But let's talk about the economic scene in ancient Greece. What's the deal with money? Well, here's the thing. The economy in ancient Greece is pretty diverse. It's not just one big thing. It depends on where you are. In rural areas, farming is the main gig. People grow stuff like olives, wine, and grain, and they might own sheep or goats. They sell their stuff at markets, mostly for silver and bronze coins. Silver's kind of like the main squeeze, used for bigger purchases and taxes. Bronze is more for everyday stuff. In coastal places, fishing and trading are huge. People head out to sea, catch fish, and trade goods with other cities and even other countries. Those salty merchants bring in all sorts of treasures, spices, fancy clothes, and more. In the cities, it's a different ballgame. There's craftspeople making pottery, tools, jewelry, and some folks have shops selling all kinds of goods. Then you've got merchants in the city too, buying and selling all sorts of stuff. And of course, there's the big leagues. Mining in places like the mountainous regions have tons of mines pulling out silver, lead, iron, and other metals that are super valuable. So to sum it up, the economy in ancient Greece is all about location. Location. Whether you're a farmer, a fisherman, a trader, or a miner, your job and your money are tied to where you live. And because ancient Greece is a big place with lots of different people, there's a lot of ways to make a living and a lot of ways to make money. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the land, the common folk of ancient Greece wind down their day. For farmers, it's a time to inspect their fields one last time before nightfall. Fishermen return to shore, their boats rocking gently on the waves as they unload their day's catch. And artisans put down their tools, their hands stained with the colors of their craft. As darkness falls, the village comes alive with a different kind of energy. Families gather in their peristyles, sharing stories and laughter over simple meals. The aroma of cooking fills the air, mixing with the sound of children's laughter and the gentle strumming of a lyre. It's a time for relaxation, for bonding with loved ones and reflecting on the day's work. Under the star-studded sky, the common folk of ancient Greece find solace in the rhythms of their daily lives. Their days may be filled with challenges, from the unpredictable nature of the seasons to the demands of their craft. But as they tuck into bed, they find comfort in the simplicity of their existence. The worries of the day fade away, replaced by the hope of a new dawn and the promise of another day in the heart of ancient Greece. Now, we go on and talk about the common folk of ancient Greece without acknowledging the role of slavery in their society. Slavery was a big part of life back then, and it definitely affected how the commoners lived. Many of the commoners were actually free, non-slave people. But unfortunately, slavery was all around them. Slaves were treated very unfairly and didn't have the same rights or freedoms as the commoners. They were bought and sold, forced to work without pay, and weren't considered citizens of ancient Greece. The commoners couldn't vote or participate in government decisions. Instead, their lives were controlled by a small group of wealthy landowners called the aristocracy. This group held all the power and made rules that benefited them while often hurting the commoners. Despite these challenges, the commoners of ancient Greece were resilient and creative. They developed strong communities and found ways to improve their lives despite the limitations placed on them. Remember, life for the commoners wasn't just about hardship. They had families, friends, and they celebrated festivals, traded goods, and played a part in the cultural achievements of ancient Greece. Their stories, though often overlooked, are crucial to understanding ancient Greek civilization. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our journey through the life of the common folk in ancient Greece. I hope you enjoyed learning about their daily routines, their jobs, and the communities they created. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more exciting historical adventures. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep exploring the past. Who knows what fascinating stories you might uncover. It is said that once, when Alexander the Great was marching through a village, he saw an old woman standing at her. She was drawing water for her garden, just as she had done many times before. Now, normally, this wouldn't have caught Alexander's attention. He had seen countless women drawing water from wells, but something about this one was different. Her hands were steady, her back was straight, and there was a quiet dignity about her that made him stop and watch. He walked closer and asked her if she wasn't afraid of his army, if she didn't fear his power. The old woman stopped her work and looked up at him. "I am not afraid of you," she said, "because I know who you are. You are Alexander the Great, but I do not fear you because I know myself. I am the daughter of the soil, and my roots run deep. Alexander listened to her, and for a moment, he understood something important. Power can be frightening, yes, but there is also a quiet strength and simplicity in knowing your place in the world, in knowing yourself. He learned that day that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought on the outside, but on the inside. Sometimes the greatest victories are not measured in lands conquered, but in understanding. People often imagine Alexander the Great on horseback, charging into battle, his face set with determination, his sword raised high. And indeed, there were moments like these when he led his men into the thick of battle, but there were also moments when his greatness shone through in quieter ways. There was the time when he visited the Oracle of Delphi, the legendary seer, who lived in a cave high up on a mountain. The oracle spoke in riddles, and many who visited her came away confused and uncertain. But Alexander, with his sharp mind and his thirst for knowledge, understood her message. He realized that his destiny lay not just in conquering new lands, but in understanding the wisdom of his ancestors. So while he was known as a warrior, he was also a student. While he was known as a conqueror, he was also a learner. His journey took him to places no one had ever gone before. He reached the edge of the world, or so he thought. But even when he saw the end of the earth, he kept walking. And when he finally turned back, it was not with the same man who had set out all those years ago. He was older now, his face lined with the wisdom of his journey, his eyes filled with the stories of distant lands. When he returned to Macedonia, his home it was, as a hero. People had heard tales of his journey, of his courage and his wisdom, and they had waited for him to come home so that they could hear his stories firsthand. Alexander sat down among them, his fire crackling before him, and he began to speak. He told them of the places he had seen, the people he had met, the lessons he had learned. And as he spoke, they listened, not just with their ears, but with their hearts. They listened not just for the stories, but for the wisdom. For in Alexander's stories, they heard their own stories reflected back at them. They saw their own lives and their own world in a new light. And so it was that Alexander the Great, the conqueror of lands, became Alexander the Wise, the teacher of nations. And his students were not just his soldiers, but all who had ears to hear and hearts to understand. All right, now it's bedtime. Lights out, everybody. Close your eyes, listen closely. I'll tell you a story about a man named Alexander. Long ago in a land far away, there was a young man named Alexander. He lived in a mighty palace, ate delicious food and wore clothes of finest silk, but he wasn't happy. You see, Alexander was special. He wasn't meant for an ordinary life. He had a big destiny. One day, when he was 20 years old, he left his home to conquer the world. He gathered an army, took a queen as his wife, and set off with 40,000 men. For 10 years he fought many battles, defeated many kings, and built many cities. And wherever he went, people called him Alexander the Great. But one day, while walking through a city, he saw something that made him sad. On one side of the street were merchants from the east selling colorful spices and silks, and on the other side were merchants from the west selling shiny glassware and perfumes. And Alexander thought to himself, why can't the people here be friends? Why can't they share their colors, their sounds, and their smells? So he talked to the merchants and told them his idea. Why don't you come together? Share what you have and create something new. The merchants liked the idea. They started trading together, and soon the whole city began to change. People shared their ideas and customs, and everyone felt happier. And Alexander was so pleased that he kept going to other cities and taught the people to do the same thing. And as he traveled, he heard many stories about magical lands full of wonders. There was a place where the sun never set, another place where flowers bloomed all year round, and an island where everyone played music. And he wanted to visit these places and see these wonders for himself. After 10 years of fighting and conquering, Alexander had become very tired. So he called his men to him and said, I want to take a break and travel around the world to see the wonders I've ever heard about. Most of his men had been fighting since they were teenagers, and they were tired too. So they agreed to take a long vacation and spend a year visiting magical places. So Alexander didn't return home. Instead, he dreamed of new cities, of blending east and west, of teaching his men new customs. He encouraged marriages between his soldiers and the peoples they met. He spoke of unity, though many resisted. In 323 BCE, in the palace of Babylon, Alexander fell ill. Some say it was a fever. Others whispered of poison, but no one knows for sure. What is known is this. At the age of 32, Alexander closed his eyes. His breath slowed, and the man who had stretched his hand across the world, from Greece to India, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, quietly faded into history. His body was carried in a grand funeral procession back to his hometown of Alexandria in Egypt, where he was buried in a golden tomb. But his plans, his hopes, his dreams, those drifted softly into legend. Now, when we speak his name, it's often in grand terms, Alexander the Great. But tonight, in this soft space between waking and sleep, we remember the quieter truth. He was a man who read by lamplight, who loved his horse, Bucephalus, who spoke to his generals beneath canvas tents, who watched the sunrise, just like you, just like me. And then, like all of us, he became a memory. And so it is with all great men. Their victories echo through the ages. Their names become synonymous with courage and strength. But behind the legends, behind the myths, they are just men. Men with hopes and dreams, joys and fears, loves and losses. They are men who laughed and cried, who walked and talked, who lived and loved. They are men like you and me. Alexander was born in Pella, the capital of the ancient kingdom of Macedon. His father was King Philip, and his mother was Queen Olympian. From the time he was a little boy, he was strong and brave, and everyone expected him to become a great leader. When he grew up, he studied war and strategy, riding and hunting, poetry and philosophy, and he learned how to persuade others to follow his ideas. This skill was very important because without followers, a great leader is just a man with an idea. When Alexander was 13 years old, his father was assassinated by one of his own generals. And even though he was half Greek, the Macedonian nobles didn't think that a boy ruled by a woman should rule over them. So they forced his mother to send him away to live with his father's friend Antipater in the city of Athens. At first, Alexander hated Antipater because he was so strict. But after a few months he began to understand what his father had taught him, that good leaders make the people around them better. And so he became a student of the wisest philosophers in Athens, learning all he could about literature, art, and government. When he was 16, he returned home and began to train soldiers. Soon he was ready to rule. In 336 BC, at the age of 20, when he inherited the throne of Macedon, he had already proven himself to be a great leader. In fact, when he took the throne, Macedon was a small, weak kingdom, but Alexander turned it into a powerhouse of an empire. He strengthened the army, improved the economy, and reformed the government. He created a new system of laws that protected the rights of all citizens, and he established a council of elders to help him make decisions. And when he wasn't working, he enjoyed simple pleasures, reading poetry, playing the lyre, riding his horse. So now you know that Alexander the Great was more than just a great warrior. He was also a great king, a great leader, and a great philosopher. He was a man who changed the world. And if you're a young person listening to this story tonight, then Alexander's story is especially meaningful because it shows that great things can come from unexpected places. Alexander wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He wasn't related to any powerful kings. He was just an ordinary guy who came from an ordinary family. But he had an extraordinary destiny. And so, if you feel like you're just an ordinary person with an extraordinary destiny, if you feel like you're recalled to do something great, but you do and know where to start, I encourage you to be patient. Wait for the time when you are ready to fulfill your destiny. Just like Alexander, you will know when the time is right. You just have to trust yourself. And so as you grow older, never forget the lessons that Alexander learned. Be curious. Ask questions. Learn everything you can about the world around you. Don't be afraid to be different. In fact, use your differences to make you stronger. And always remember that the greatest heroes often come from the most unlikely places. And now it's time to close our storybook. Alexander may be gone, but his story lives on in each of us. It's in the way we explore the world, in the way we treat others, and in the way we chase our dreams. Before we go, remember, the greatest adventures are often found in the most ordinary of places. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and above all, keep believing in the power of stories. Good night.